Hello, everyone. Hope you all are doing well, and welcome back to another episode of the Big Game and Box Score podcast. Hope you all are having a great day. If not, hope this episode can make it a little bit better. As always, I'm your host, Cole, joined by my co host, Brian.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back. In today's episode is going to be a continuation of our four-part series where we go over our predictions for each Power Four conference and our top players at each position.
Right, you are, Brian. Today, we will be going over our ACC predictions and our top five running backs in college football.
So excited. Just a couple of things before we get into the video real quick. If you are not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. It will be greatly appreciated. And if this is your first time tuning in to the Big Game and Box Score podcast, please make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you'll never miss out on any of our videos. Finally, if you're watching, please take a moment to hit the like button as this will greatly appreciate. This will be greatly appreciated for us, and this will certainly help out our video in the YouTube algorithm.
Thank you, Brian. Also, please be sure to follow our other social media platforms on Instagram and TikTok. So, here's how this episode's going to go. If you tuned into our episode last week where we went over our Big 12 predictions and the top five quarterbacks, we will be doing it exactly the same way how we did it last time. First, we will be going over who our favorites are to win the ACC, then who in the ACC we think is a playoff contender, then who in the ACC that we think is a dark horse, who in the ACC we think will most likely raise their stock up from last year or improve, who in the ACC we think will decline from last year, and finally our pick to win the ACC. And then we will go over who our top five running backs are after in the next segment of the video.
Indeed. Also, be sure to comment down below who do you think wins the ACC this year, and who do you think are the top five running backs in college football?
Yep. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get into our ACC predictions. All right. Now, for my favorite to win the ACC, it's none other than the Miami Hurricanes, aka the U. Not really surprised that a team that was a couple plays away from winning the national championship last year makes this list, especially when you could argue that they improved almost all across the board. Starting with obviously their quarterback, who, if you watched our episode last week, Brian and I view Mensa as a top three quarterback in this sport. They also returned their entire running back room, including their bell cow and star running back, Mark Fletcher, along with returning Malachi Tony and pairing him up with 1,000-yard receiver from Duke last year, who was Mensa's teammate, Cooper Barkate. If there's any concern I have for this team, it would be their offensive line. They're replacing four out of five starters, I believe, and one of their starters will be true freshman Jackson Cantwell at left tackle. It's either left or right tackle, I forget. But regardless, this offensive line, I still believe their offensive line will be good because Mario Cristobal is an offensive line. Offensive line is Mario Cristobal's cup of tea, but it might take them a little while to gel. Who knows how long it will take, but I think by year's end, this offensive line will be very good. Next up on their defense, you think despite losing Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, two top 25 draft picks in this past draft, you think they would fall off a lot. Well, they might fall off a little. They will have a very elite pass rush, in my opinion, headlined by Damon Wilson, who was all SEC second team last season and recorded 9 sacks in the SEC. So take that for what you will. They also return guys like Armando Blount and Marquise Lightfoot, who were depth pieces behind Bain and Mesidor, who put up 2.5 sacks on the season last year. Miami's also returns both their starting D tackles as well as adding in Nebraska transfer Keona Davis. Can't forget that. So this Miami D line will still be very much lethal and still, in my opinion, will be among the best in the country. As for Miami's linebacker group, they should be solid despite the losses to the draft, and they returned their number one tackler from that group, so should still be solid. And then their secondary, despite losing the losses of Jacoby Thomas and Keontae Scott, they still field an elite secondary. Miami's secondary will still be very good as they return guys like Bryce Fitzgerald, who had, what was it, 5 or 6 interceptions as a true freshman. Like, that kid was insane. Their secondary will still be elite, along with this entire defense will still be elite. The only concern I have with Miami is Mario Cristobal has a tendency to slip up in games in which Miami should easily win. Like, you can look at the past couple years where they lost to Louisville and SMU in the regular season, or the year before that with Cam Ward when they lost to Georgia Tech and who was the other team? Syracuse. That's the only thing that concerns me about this Miami team is Mario Cristobal's and the entire Miami team's habit of slipping up against teams that they should have no problem beating.
Alrighty, and for my favorite to win the ACC conference, I also have the Miami Hurricanes because it is all about the U, and the ACC runs through the U. This team is all around very dominant, and I think will easily pick up their momentum that they had last year. I know they lost a lot of starters in the draft, of course, Francis Malagoa, and as well as 4 of the 5 starters on the O line, and then on defense, of course, then the 2 superstars in Ruben Bain and Akeem Messidor. However, I think they retool very nicely. They also have a lot of guys stepping in, like Marquise Lightfoot, who I think, and of course getting Damon Wilson from the portal, who I think can easily fill in Messidor and Bain's shoes from last year. Plus Ahmad Moten, who's one of the best D linemen in college football. And then of course Bryce Fitzgerald and Zechariah Poyser, who are a really solid safety duo. I think that defense is going to be one of the. I think that the U defense is still going to be just like last season, one of the best in the country. And then we go on to their offense where things get a lot more interesting. Really talented offense. As if you guys remember in the last episode with when I said Darian Menso was top 3 quarterback in the college football, I meant it. He's an incredible quarterback. He's incredibly accurate. He's an incredible playmaker, and I think he's gonna be. I think with Mario Cristobal, I think and his offense, I think he's gonna elevate even more. Of course, great receiving core with Malachi Tony, one of the best freshman seasons last season in a very long time. Plus Cooper Barkay is a buddy, and then Vendravius Jacobs. That is a really electric wide receiver trio. Plus Mark Fletcher and Shamar Brown in the backfield. I think that's going to be a really solid backfield as well. And overall, the ACC runs through the U, and these guys are going to be set for another major season.
All right. Now for my playoff contenders in the ACC. I have two, SMU and Louisville. You want to know a funny stat from last year, Brian?
Yeah.
Both these teams beat Miami last year. I mean, obviously, I stated it before when I was talking about Miami, but both these teams did beat Miami in the regular season last year, and both teams, in my opinion, will improve this year. SMU returns Kevin Jennings at QB while adding pieces at running back and receiver through the portal to improve both those position groups. The Mustangs also add great depth on both the offensive and defensive line, as both those lines are expected to be 10 deep on both sides. The linebacker and secondary units for SMU look to take steps up in length and athleticism. So, SMU, they got something going for them. As for Louisville, they add in Lincoln Keenholz, who, when I stated it in our preseason top 25 episode, it sounded like he was giving Julian Sayin a really good run for his money in spring ball last year. Now, how legit that was, I don't know, but who knows? We'll see how legit it might or might not have been this season. They also field one of the top running back rooms in college football, led by their sensational running back, Isaac Brown. While their receiver room should be serviceable, it won't be up to par with what it was last year just due to what they lost, but they add in transfers to make up for some of the loss from last year. Louisville does lose multiple starters on both their offensive and defensive lines, but they do get back those losses through the transfer portal, so they should be solid up front on both sides of the ball. The linebacker room will probably be the weak link of their team when it comes to depth, at least. The secondary for the Cardinals looks to be about where it was last year. So who knows? I could see either one of these teams, SMU or Louisville, upsetting Miami if they happen to meet Miami in the ACC championship game. After all, they upset Miami last year. So we'll just have to see.
Alrighty. So now for my playoff contenders in the ACC, I also have two, and that is SMU and Louisville. Of course, these are, as Cole said, these are the two teams that beat Miami in the regular season last season. I think both these teams will be giving Miami a little bit of a tough time, I think, or at least a close-ish battle within the ACC title. Um, and I think I'm starting out with Louisville. I think they made a couple really underrated additions this offseason. Of course, Lincoln Kinholtz picking him up, I thought was a really, really good pickup. If it is true that he was giving Julian Saint a rough time for or at least a close competition at their initial QB competition the last year, 2 years ago, then I think he's gonna be in for a major year. Um they also got, of course, Isaac Brown and K'Wan Brown returning in the backfield. Isaac Brown's excellent. He's one of the best running backs in college football right now. He's incredibly fast. He's incredible. He's got a lot of flexibility. He can really give him any formation. He can make a big play out of it. And then you got a couple of really nice transfer receivers they picked up, including LaWayne McCoy and Trey Richardson, who I think will be giving Keen Holtz two dynamic receivers. And then on defense, like Cole said, they stayed relatively similar to the secondary. Although look out for Clev Lubin, who they picked up last year, and now he's entering his final season of college football. I think he's gonna be a big game changer. And I think the Cardinals are gonna be in for a pretty big year. And then as for SMU, they do return Kevin Jennings. The one thing I will say about Jennings, though, he's an incredible playmaker, underrated in his mobility. But the one thing I will say, he needs to step up in the big games. As other than Miami last year, he really against the better competition, he really struggled. So I think he's really gonna need to step it up a bit if SMU is really rolling a bit like have an underrated run. And then, although he's got some weapons to do, they picked up Yannick Smith in the portal. They picked up Randy Pittman, and then Kendrick Raphael for the backfield, leading the backfield alongside Derek McFall, who returns for his second season. Well, I think that'll be a really solid duo in the backfield. And then they added seven new portal additions on defense, which I think will elevate the unit, making SMU definitely a team to look out for in 2026.
All right. At my dark horse in the ACC, I have the Clemson Tigers. Now, I almost considered not putting any team as my dark horse, but you know, I still somewhat respect Dabo as a coach, although he has very much fallen off in recent years. And I still kind of find it hard in myself to forgive Clemson, even though after I put so much stock in them last year, I had them as a top three team before the season, and they just completely failed to meet any expectations. And a lot of it has to do with Dabo not adjusting to modern times in college football. Now, this Clemson team is super talented. Like, they have a lot of talent. They have one of the best receiver rooms in the nation, led by Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore. They have one of the best linebacker rooms in the entire nation, led by stud freshman from last year, Sammy Brown. It really all falls on Dabo. I feel this is a make or break year for him. If Clemson sucks again, look for Dabo to be on the hot seat.
All right. So then for my dark horse, I have a team that I think a lot of people are not going to expect to see here, but that is the Virginia Tech Hokies. This team won the James Franklin sweepstakes. I know that is a name that will ruffle a lot of feathers, roll a lot of eyes, but let me tell you, even though he was not a good playoff coach, he is an excellent regular season coach, and he is really good at building himself a squad. Of course, now he heads to Blacksburg, and he is going to be in for a much easier conference to say the least. Of course he joins a Hokies team that was pretty disappointing last year. Um, Obviously we're not a very competitive team last year. But they had a lot of guys in the portal on both sides of the ball, four on offense, two on defense. And the additions they made are marquee. They reunite Ethan Grunkenmeyer, he's gonna be likely taking starting shots as he was recruited by Franklin at Penn State, and he also reunited him with tight end Luke Reynolds. And then they also got a really solid receiving duo of Aiden Green, who returns for his senior season, and Quayshawn Brown, who they got in the portal from Duke. And then on defense, well, I only got two transfer portal additions: Javion Hilson and Jacquez White. Jacquez White is he's supposed to be a really solid lockdown corner, and then Javion Hilson on the edge. I think if those two end up being game changing, I think the Hokies could easily be in for a bowl game appearance, maybe even like a 7 or 8 win season.
All right, and now the team that I think is most likely to improve this season is the team that Brian was just talking about, the Virginia Tech Hokies. It'll be very interesting to see what James Franklin can turn this team around in year one. Now, I understand he had that falling out at Penn State last year. They lost a few games, Franklin got fired, all that, but Virginia Tech, the bar is a lot lower here than it was at Penn State. So there's that. Plus, James Franklin brought in a top 25 recruiting class from this most recent cycle, and then also a top 25 transfer portal class. So this team should have the talent to at least be competitive in the ACC. It all depends on whether James Franklin and the Hokies can put it together. Like, I could easily see this team winning 8 to 10 games if all goes right for them. Now, are they a playoff team in year one? That's a different story, but I could definitely see this being a 9-10 win team and Franklin having real success as a head coach at Virginia Tech in year one.
Alrighty, so for my teams that are going to take a bit of a progression this year in the ACC, I have four. First one is the Clemson Tigers, as Cole mentioned earlier, as his dark horse. I think this team is going to be in for an improvement year. I still am a big believer in Dabo Swinney. I haven't completely counted him out yet, and even though and they were still a really like good receiving core with Bryant Wesco, T.J. Moore, was a really underrated duo, plus Tyler Brown. They got Gideon Davidson, who was pretty solid as a freshman at running back, and Christian Bendicor was pretty good, tight end, who was a pretty solid freshman. Three transfers on defense, and then a battle over the Chris's at starting quarterback with Chris Denson and Chris Vizina. Um, and we'll see what happens here, but I think they could definitely be in for an improvement year. Next one is the Virginia Cavaliers. I think this team is going to be in for a pretty big season as well. I mean, of course, they did win. They did win 10 games last year under Tony Elliott, so it's pretty hard to progress somewhere from here. But they have a very manageable schedule. Plus, I really like their additions on offense in the portal, including quarterback Bo Pribola, who had a pretty solid year at Missouri, and of course was a Franklin disciple. And we know, and those quarterbacks, even though they don't really produce at the NFL level, they definitely produce the college ranks. Peyton Lewis is a really solid pickup from Tennessee in the backfield, and then Rico Flores and Deshaun Martin as a wide receiver duo. I think the Cavs will be in for a pretty good year. And then we also got the NC State Wolfpack, which is interesting because these two teams do play the first week of the year, so this will be pretty interesting to see how these two fare. The big reason why I have the Wolfpack here is CJ Bailey. Bailey, of course, showed a lot of promise last year as a sophomore, and of course, he was a very highly rated recruit coming out of high school. And freshman year didn't show a whole lot. Sophomore year, he had a pretty big year, and this year I think he's in for a major year. And of course, because of course they picked up Davion Dozier and JoJo Trader. Trader, of course, had a pretty productive season at Miami last year. Kind of was overshadowed by Malachi Tony, but still a really good receiver. And especially with and five transfers on defense, I think the Wolfpack are gonna be in for a really solid season. And then my last one is the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. I This team actually was really underrated last year. They quietly won 7 games last year. I did not expect that at all. And then with the additions they made, of course, Cam Shanks from Arkansas, who was a bright spot, otherwise garbage season that the Razorbacks had last year, plus Antonio Meeks, plus bringing in Gio Lopez, who I think even though he wasn't very good at North Carolina, he's still a really solid playmaker. I'm still a believer in him. I think the Demon Deacons could definitely increase their win total this year.
All right. And now the team I have that's most likely to regress this season in the ACC is the Virginia Cavaliers. With the loss of their QB, Chandler Morris, and the expectation to decline at many positions on this team, expect the ACC runner-ups that went 11-3 and beat Missouri in a bowl game to take a step back this season. Now, I still think this team makes a bowl game. They just won't have the same success that last year's team did.
All right. And then for my regression, I have the Duke Blue Devils. Of course, the reigning ACC champions, which a lot of people I think forget about because they didn't even make the playoff last year, but that's a separate issue. I mean, on paper, like right out the gate, like losing Darian Mensah, Cooper Barkay is instantly gonna like make me be an assumption for regressing. Even though I do like Manny Diaz as a head coach, I really think that like I don't see his team winning like 8 games again this year. Of a decline for them. I see them definitely like I could still see them making a bowl game. Even a bowl game seems like they'll probably win 6 games at least. But yeah, just definitely they're definitely not going to be the ACC champions this year again. I do like the bring in Walker Egat. I thought he's got a really solid arm and had really solid numbers at San Jose State, but he's quite a bit of a downgrade from Mensah. Um, and then and then Nate Shepard, who did show some signs of freshman, but and I think he could be really good along with CJ Campbell. They got the transfer portal, but only 2 portal additions on defense, which was already not a great defense. I think the Blue Devils are going to be in for a long year. And then I got the Pittsburgh Panthers. Um, this team is just not like this team is on the downfall. I feel like they lost Eli Holstein. Of course lost Kendrick Raphael as well. Their bell cow back. They only had 3 transfers on offense and 2 on defense. And I'm not really that big of a believer in Pat Narduzzi. I think he kind of like peaked a couple years ago, and I think the Panthers are on the decline. I wouldn't be surprised if this team wins more than 4 games this year.
All right, now wrapping up our ACC predictions. My pick to win the ACC is no surprise the Miami Hurricanes. As I said earlier, this team is just so talented that it's going to take Mario Cristobal's annual habit of choking against teams that he should have no trouble beating for them to not flat out win this conference.
Alrighty. My prediction to win the ACC is also the Miami Hurricanes. It is still all about the U. I think this team is the most talented team in the ACC, and they are also the most well-rounded team in the ACC. It's going to take a lot for them to not win this conference with how loaded their roster is. Like maybe Cristobal, like it's going to take Mario Cristobal losing some pretty like to losing to some pretty inferior teams, maybe like a Wake Forest or even like a North Carolina, maybe. Like you know what he does. He always drops 1 or 2 games a year that he shouldn't. If Mario Cristobal drops a couple games, a game or two that he should have otherwise won, I still feel like this team is like in prime position to take back the ACC and and make another deep playoff run.
All right, now on to our next segment or other segment of this episode. are top five running backs in all of college football.
Yep. Even though the running back position isn't considered to be a valuable position as it once was, it is still a very crucial position to have on the field, and it is a great trait to have a good run game in today's day and age.
Spot on, Brian. If you look at every team that's won the national championship in recent years, or honestly ever that I can recall, whether that be in NFL or college, every team that has been able to consistently run the football at a high level.
Yep. If you can't run the football, you won't win anything.
Yep. People are saying the running back position is dead, but with how we've seen offenses run through some of these running backs that we're going to talk about in just a bit, I don't know. The running back position might be coming back, but anywho, on to the lists. Coming in at my number one running back in college football, I have Missouri's Ahmad Hardy. Now, first off, I want to say that I hope Ahmad Hardy can come back at some point during this season. I understand he just recovered from getting shot in the leg. So hopefully he can come back at some point because I would hate to not see him in his final season of college football. But anyway, on to Hardy as a player. This dude has just been sensational since his true freshman season in 2024 at UL Monroe, as he has, get this, almost 400 more rushing yards than any running back in college football since 2024, with almost 3,000 total rushing yards in the last two seasons. Hardy is one of those rare running backs that has not only elite contact balance and strength, but also possesses phenomenal vision and the ability to create explosive plays. Last season, Hardy led the Power Four in rushing yards with 1,648 and missed tackles forced with 96, while also leading the nation in yards after contact with 1,181 yards, which equates to 87% of his total rushing yards. That's insane. Hopefully, we can see Hardy back playing at 100% because he's a special player. If there's any running back that can make an argument for being a top 10 pick this upcoming draft, it's him.
Alrighty. Coming in my number one spot, it was a really tight race between these two, but I also have Ahmad Hardy. First thing I want to say is I'm wishing him the speediest recovery for what happened to him in this offseason. I hope he comes back and better than ever to begin the season. But I think he will. He's an absolute beast. He's an absolute stud. Like Cole said, all the production in the world over the last 2, 3 seasons, and he's only elevated his production this last year. And I think he's going to, and of course, he's in 2024 ran for 1,351 yards, and he is the engine behind the Missouri Tigers offense. He is an absolute stud. I really, really am hoping to see him play because he is so fun to watch, and he's got all the traits in the world to be an NFL caliber running back as well. Give me Ahmad Hardy at one.
Right, you are, Brian. At number two, Brian's right. It was really close between these two, but at number two, I have Keywan Lacey at Ole Miss. If there's any running back that could rival Hardy for the number one running back in this upcoming draft in 2027, it's definitely Lacey. Just turn on the tape and watch this guy play. His contact balance is insane. He's exceptional at breaking tackles behind the line of scrimmage. You could argue that he made the Ole Miss offensive line look a lot better than they actually were in reality. The kid really knows how to use his strength, considering that he's only 5'11 and only 200 pounds. It also attests to his pad level because, again, if you turn on the tape, he runs really low for a guy that tall. Other things to note about Lacey is his footwork, his ability to block, and his short yardage abilities, which shows up on the stat sheet as he led all Power Four running backs in touchdowns with 24. The biggest difference, what sets him apart from Hardy and why I think Hardy's the better running back, is Hardy has elite vision while Lacey's vision is just really good. It's definitely something he can improve on this season, but hey, almost every player has something to improve on. In fact, every player has something that they could probably improve on. Lacey was second among all running backs in the Power Four in rushing yards with 1,564 yards, yards after contact with 1,010 rushing yards after contact, and missed tackles with 89. Expect Lacey, along with Hardy, to be a first round draft pick in 2027.
Alrighty, coming in my number two spot and just barely missing on the number one spot is Keywan Lacey. I mean, this, like I said, this guy is. I mean, like Cole said, he is the absolute engine behind the Ole Miss Rebels offense. I know everyone talks about Trey Chambliss, rightfully so, and how he airs out the rock. But this offense is not. But this offense, these Rebels do not go to the semifinals without Keywan Lacey. He tied for the Rebels single season rushing yards record with 1,567 yards and 24 touchdowns. That is absolutely insane. And he is just an absolute dog. He's a producer every single week. He's very consistent and he's got all the traits, just like Hardy, he got all the traits in the world to be a very talented NFL running back as well. And I love everything seen from this guy, and I can't wait to see how he does before the NFL draft comes in 2027. This will likely be his final season in college as well, and I can't wait to see how he does.
All right. At number three, I have Isaac Brown of the Louisville Cardinals. After rushing for over 1,100 yards as a true freshman in 2024, Brown was slightly limited this year. And by slightly, I mean a lot, due to injury. Despite the despite that though, his explosiveness was on full display this year as he averaged 8.8 yards per carry this season and 5.3 yards per carry after contact, which was good for second among all FBS running backs last season. Speaking of yards per carry, Brown, throughout his entire college career, the last two seasons, has led all backs in the country in yards per carry at 7.8. Brown also leads all Power Four running backs in forced missed tackle rate at 39%. Now back for his junior season at Louisville. Expect Brown to have a monster third year before he most likely goes off to the NFL draft.
Alrighty, also coming at my number three spot, I have Isaac Brown. I've loved this kid since I first started watching him a couple of years ago. I've always he is one of my favorite players to watch in college football. He is so fast. He is so great at making plays. Like especially when he's into the open. Like you can't catch the guy. He's fast as lightning. Um, and I know he did have a down year last year, of course, with injuries, and then Keyshawn Brown stepping up in a couple moments as well. But hey, can't forget about Isaac Brown. I mean, one Brown steps up, you can't forget about the other Brown. The Brown duo is gonna be in for another major year as well in for the Louisville Cardinals, and there's a reason why Isaac Brown, he's always making the highlight reels. I mean, in addition to his speed, he's talented in space as well. He can make a lot of guys miss as well. And if he is healthy, he is going to be in for a major, major season.
Yep. Coming in at my number four spot, I have Mark Fletcher of Miami. Now, if you didn't know who Mark Fletcher was before the college football playoffs last year, then you definitely learned his name during the playoffs. There were not many players in the college football playoffs last year that performed better than Mark Fletcher. In fact, I'd go as far as to say Mark Fletcher was a top five player throughout the entire playoffs, the way he was playing. He was one of the main reasons why Miami won their first three playoff games and a main reason why Miami was close in the national championship game versus Louisville. Normally, I wouldn't pull up individual games for a certain player, but for Mark Fletcher, that's what I'm going to do here. Like, this guy was insane throughout the playoffs. As in Miami's first round game against Texas A&M, he had 17 carries for 172 rushing yards on 10 yards a pop. Against Ohio State in the quarterfinals, which was by far his worst game, but he still had 19 carries for 90 rushing yards on, albeit 4.7 yards per carry, which is not great, but still, this is by far his worst game of the playoffs. I forgot to mention he had the receiving touchdown against Ohio State in their quarterfinal game too. But against Ole Miss in the semis, he had 22 carries for 133 rushing yards, which equated to 6 yards a pop. And then finally, in the national championship game against Indiana, them in the game on offense, as he had 17 carries for 112 rushing yards and two rushing touchdowns. Pretty crazy playoff run for a running back, if you ask me. Good luck trying to tackle this guy, dude. At 6'2", 225 pounds, watching this guy run through playoff defenses and dragging multiple defenders for extra yardage was something else entirely to watch. Fletcher's other notable abilities, besides what I just mentioned, include his ability to shed both ankle and arm tackles and his quick feet and ability to cut and find open space. It'll be interesting to see what Fletcher can do returning for his senior year to help Miami, potentially help Miami get back to the national championship and win it this time around.
Alrighty, coming in my number four spot, I also have Mark Fletcher. Um, this is a guy who I was always a believer in, and especially after the playoff run, now I'm a big believer in. He had one of the best playoff runs as a running back I've seen in a long time. As Cole mentioned all the stats, and he's like the thing that really impressed me though about him is he's a physical runner who can take like 20 carries a game. This guy can catch the rock too, and which you don't usually see. You usually see that from like the speedy, agile guys. You don't see that from like a big bruising running back, like in the NFL or at the college level. And that is what makes this guy even more talented than everything we just mentioned. He is so talented at like in so many different aspects of the running back position, and it's just like. And especially in the impact he brings to the U and the impact he brought back to the U last year, and I think this year is going to be instrumental with their successes. He was instrumental in their success in the playoff run last year. He'll be instrumental this year. And I think if he continues his momentum, look out for the U this year. It's gonna be all about the U.
All right. And rounding out my top five, at number five, I have Florida's Jaden Baugh. I honestly couldn't imagine being a linebacker or a safety trying to tackle this guy. This guy is a freight train. At 6'1", 230 pounds, Baugh has insane contact balance that is second to none of any running back in college football. He is the most physical running back, in my opinion, in all of college football. He's also a tackle breaking machine, as last season he forced 65 total missed tackles. Yeah. Even when Baugh gets caught in traffic, he's still consistently churning his feet for extra yardage. It's what most running backs coaches try to teach them at a young age, but not too many do it. But Baugh is a professional at doing that. Anytime you think you have him down, he'll churn his feet for a few extra yards that instead of being just a 5 yard game, it'll turn into an 8 yard gain. His other notable attributes are his agility and his vision. Overall, I could honestly see Jaden Baugh being much higher on this list by season's end, as he was very much held back by that putrid Florida offense last year. But with John Summerall and new Florida offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner, I could see Jaden Baugh going absolutely crazy and potentially putting himself in the same status as Ahmad Hardy and Kewan Lacey. That's how special I think this guy is. Kind of crazy to think about that he was recruited as a linebacker out of high school.
Alrighty, coming in at my number five spot, I also have Jaden Baugh. I really like this guy. I think he is a really talented bruising running back. He's eminent of that of like a Nick Chubb or a Derrick Henry where he can just bulldoze right through um defenses and defensive lines and linebackers. Like this guy's a nightmare to tackle. He's an incredible pure runner. I mean, obviously, he can't really. He's not as efficient with catching the ball, but it doesn't matter when you're a big bruising running back and you can run through any defender. And that's exactly what Ball can do. Ball is also very productive in the red zone as well and in goal line situations, rightfully so, given his size and given his metrics and given his strength and all those attributes of a bruising running back. And I think now at the Florida offense, of course, with Summerall now, John Summerall now the head coach, I think he's a brilliant offensive mind, and I think they're gonna get more position production out of Philo than they did compared to DJ Lagway last year, and just the offense around Baugh is more consistent than in addition to the coaches, the talents is more there on the O line and the skill positions. And I think Baugh is gonna absolutely explode this season and definitely rise up on next year's list.
All right. Before we close out, we're going to quickly rip off a few honorable mentions. My first honorable mention is Justice Haynes. People forget that before this guy got hurt last year, he was on pace to be an All American. I'm excited to see how much he tears up these AC defenses this year at Georgia Tech. I know Brian is hurting knowing that he chose to leave Michigan. My next honorable mention is LJ Martin from BYU. If there's any running back that could rival Jaden Baugh for being the most physical running back, it's this guy for sure. And finally, my third honorable mention, I had to put in one of my guys. I have Raleek Brown from Texas, formerly of USC and Arizona State, but now of Texas. After Texas having their worst running back room in the Sarkisian era, Brown, along with fellow transfer Hollywood Smothers, look to bring this Texas running back room back to its former glory from years past before this past year. And Brown looks to be the number one guy at running back, although closely trailed behind Smothers. It's more of a 1A, 1B situation. Brown is an explosive playmaker and forced more missed tackles than Texas's top two running backs and Quintravion Wisener and CJ Baxter combined. According to Texas's new running backs coach Jabbar Jalouk, Brown's like a bowling ball with spikes, which, if that's the case, I can't wait to watch him play this upcoming season.
Alrighty, I also have three honorable mentions. I have LJ Martin, who I think he is very similar to James Ball, absolute physical specimen, amazing red zone running back as well, and I think he's gonna be in for a major year. And we also got Justice Haynes. I hate that he left the Maize and Blue, but I'm very happy for him and see what he does. I'm excited to see what he does now. Georgia Tech now. If he didn't get hurt, dude, he was having such a good season with us before he got hurt. He was so productive, and he's got all the tools to beat every down back in both this year for GT and the NFL. And finally, I had to include my boy. I got my boy Jordan Marshall. Like I think he stepped up really nicely last year when Haynes got hurt, and even he got hurt towards the end of the year. He's still like he's a workhorse, man. He had some minor injuries, lingering injuries at the end of the season, and he still played through it. He played in the bowl game too for us and had a great game. I think he's going to be in for a major year. Although we do have the number one recruit from the 2026 high school recruiting class in Savion Hyder. These two are going to be a demonic duo to watch this year. They're going to be absolute demons. I think these two are going to go explode and who knows? Like we could see these two like really put up some historic numbers this year and in Kyle Whittingham's offense and I didn't include one of my boys, but let's go blue.
Man, it's kind of crazy to think that our lists, including our honorable mentions, were basically mirror images of each other, except for both of our last honorable mentions. We included a running back from our teams. I mean, do what you will. All right, now, with all that being said, we have officially concluded another episode of the Big Game and Box Score podcast.
Yes, sir. We had a great time doing this as always. Just before we end our episode today, I wanted to remind everyone to please be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. It'd be greatly appreciated always. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Big Game and Box Score podcast.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in. Can't wait to catch you all next week when we cover our Big Ten predictions and our top five wide receivers in college football. Can't wait for that episode. Very excited. Per usual, please be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Can't wait to see you all next week. And as always, peace.
Peace.